Howdy, friends, and welcome to the StoryField. This is a podcast where we talk about business, faith, and life in general.
Okay, so here's the deal. We want you to be encouraged. We want you living in hope. This life we live is complex. It's hard at times. At the StoryField, you will find great stories of normal people just like us who will inspire you. Our goal is that you leave encouraged, inspired, and excited to move forward in life. But before we get started, one thing though, if you're listening and you find yourself really hopeless right now, send us an email at hope@thestoryfield.com so we can pray for you. Thanks for joining us today. Let's get started.
Well, hey, StoryField, Mike McHargue. I am pumped today. You know, it's really been a bit, Mike, since we've kind of had a little bit of a heavier focus on business owners and executives. And I know you are the man for the job. So welcome to the show today.
Thanks very much. Appreciate being with you today. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Well, if you are a business owner or executive or involved in a church, nonprofit, any kind of entity or organization, then you're going to gain a lot from this interview today, including myself. I'm super pumped. It's like I have like the professional in front of us and we get free shots at you, Mike. So we're going to dive really quick into your content. And one of the things I want to mention is a book you have just released a month or so ago called That's on Me. Seasoned executives confess their rookie mistakes. So we're in the book, you gathered almost 40, C-suite guys and gals, and they share their wisdom from mistakes about things they could have done better, and just it's going to be awesome and inside. So a couple of those things, I know this will tune in some business owners, or this will perk the interest of business owners. A couple of things are keeping teams focused, connecting with staff, running effective meetings. Oh my gosh, we'll set up camp on that. Managing personnel and developing people. I mean, all that stuff. If you're a business owner or executive or an operator, or just like, yeah. So, but I want to, as we get into it, I want to be honest. Like, leadership is so hard, and running a business or church or nonprofit or an organization is hard. It's challenging. So we need your help today, Mike. I need your encouragement today. So,
all right,
let me tell a little bit about you, and then let's get going on it. Okay.
Great.
You've been coaching leaders and teams for 25 years plus. You're a founder and president of your consulting firm, the Mike McHargue Consulting, and you're a principal and a consultant with Patrick Lencioni's group, the Table Group, which we were talking about beforehand. We personally love the work you guys do there. And you've worked with thousands of leaders and over 500 leadership teams in your career. So you have seen some stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So your big purpose is to make organizations stronger and more productive. And you do that by helping leaders master the disciplines of organizational health, again, which we're going to talk about. So let's get going. The way we like to do StoryField, we want to we want people to know you a little bit. We want you to have a little bit of relationship capital with them. And that starts with your story. I want to know where you grew up. Tell us a little about your family, where you went to school. Give us a little bit of a background to know the Mike we're talking to today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in the Bay Area in California.
Okay.
So, I was actually born in Japan, but my dad was in the Air Force. We moved to California before I even knew what was going on, and grew up in the Bay Area in California and lived there most of my life. And then about 21 years ago, I had a smaller family at that time, a wife and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And we'd both been in California all of our lives. We thought, are we going to do this forever, or are we going to try something different? And so on a little bit of a whim, we said, hey, Idaho is the most remote place we can go and still do our jobs. So let's give it a try. We can always go back. And we just never really wanted to go back. So moving it from when your kids are 3 and 1 is a great time to move before they get all involved in school. So we did that. And, the kids are now 24 and 22. And then we have another one who is 17. So
that's awesome.
We adopted her from Mexico now 17 years ago. And that's been just a tremendous blessing on our family. So,
wow,
so that's a little bit about my family.
We're going Idaho, and that's it. I mean, you just left California.
That's it.
Well, we
Yeah.
could have found you some remote places in Texas, but I don't think it would have been as nice of a spot as Idaho.
Yeah, at the time I was responsible for the Western U.S. and Canada for the company I was working for.
Okay.
So I had to be somewhere within that with that range. And so we made the move. And I was in the first 2 weeks I was here, I was like, I never want to move anywhere. My wife was took a little longer for her. You know, she
Yeah.
didn't have a support network with the kids and all that, but she got it figured out pretty quickly. And she's
Oh
probably
my
more
gosh.
adamant about staying here than I am. So
So three
um,
kids, married
3 kids,
29 years.
20, 29 years now. Yep. Yep.
Congratulations.
And
That's amazing.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, well,
So,
where'd you go to college, and then how did you get
yeah.
into the stuff you're doing now?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to undergraduate at Santa Clara University and studied psychology. I went to San Francisco State University and studied counseling and got some real interested in counseling and people at that time. But didn't get into this work until about 25 years ago. I got thrown into a leadership position working for a technology firm that I was not ready for. And I made a lot of mistakes around being clear about the most important things in the organization, mistakes around getting to know my people, meetings, as you mentioned before, hiring and firing poorly, feedback. It was a mess. It was really a mess. And I shudder to think of the problems I caused for the people in my organization by not doing some of these really fundamental things well. And so I tried to get better. And the way I did that was by asking leaders who were great leaders to come alongside me and help me. You know when you're a bad leader, and I was. And I'm so grateful for that mentoring, that help. But I also started reading books, like every book I could find on leading people, leading teams, culture, clarity, like the whole thing. And the books that really resonated with me the most were these books by Patrick Lencioni. So you mentioned that you're a big fan there.
Hmm.
I was too. So I read books about team dysfunction and applied those simple concepts, and the teams I worked with got better. Read Bat's book, Death by Meeting, and started running my meetings in a more organized and thoughtful way. And our decisions got better. There's clarity across our organization I never had before. So anyway, that's kind of the foundation of not only the book, but just how I got interested in this work.
Yeah.
And about 13 years ago, I brought Pat into an organization I was working in. He came in. The work we did together with him made a huge difference, and I was almost immediately like, I want to do that. Like I read all this guy's books. I want to do what he's doing way more than what I'm doing, which is leading a sales organization. And so that's how I got involved working with the Table Group. So there's a little bit, maybe long-winded version of my story.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. And the rest was kind of history as far as you started your own firm. I mean, got connected with Pat and his team and the group, and then the rest is
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, at the time we have about 50 people that do what I do now. We all have our own businesses, but they're 100% aligned to Pat and the Table Group. And so it was a much smaller group then, but I left my corporate job, started my own business, 100% aligned, and started working with leaders and teams. And that's what I spend all my time doing now.
That's great. Micah, sounds
Yeah.
like we have a out of the boater guy. I've heard of already two big transitions he's made and big so
Exactly.
he's our type of people. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, well I want to start grilling you a little bit. And we'll pull some personal stuff in as well, but I do, like I said,
Sure.
this will be our first one in a little bit to really get into the meat of what you do, and I think you could really bless people, and that's why I want to go there quickly.
For sure.
Let's start by talking about the book. What led up to you wanting to write that? And then let's get into, I want to know some of the big mistakes that
Yeah.
these people that you talk about made. And I want it for the business owners. What's some big stuff you've seen, and what do we need to do? Let's just help some
Sure.
people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I told you, maybe where I got the idea for the book was I was making all the mistakes myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I only had a manual or somebody alongside me to coach me on not only what I should do, but what I shouldn't do, that would have been helpful. And that was 25 years ago. But when I started doing this work with leaders and teams, I started asking the question. This is usually the second or third time I've been with a leader and his or her team. I started asking the question, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made? And how did it affect your people? How did it affect your organization? And it was really more of just to get them talking and kind of an icebreaker type of a thing to start thinking about being a leader. And the stories were just really rich, And I was like, man, it's too bad that just this team is hearing this. This is really useful. Now, in the background, my wife is an editor. She's a book editor. She's done like 350 books. And so like for the majority of our marriage, I was like, oh my gosh, if I was smart enough about anything at all, I could write a book. And because I'm married to an editor, right?
Oh,
and
100%.
it turns out the only thing I'm an expert in is making mistakes. And so that's what my book ended up being all about. But back to these stories, these leaders who were telling these stories, they were great stories, but they were humble in sharing those. And so I started asking the question, like, this might be the book. I started asking the question, hey, if I ever write a book collecting all these mistakes, would you be willing to share that, for the good of other leaders? And I get to work with great leaders, and almost invariably they're like, well, yeah, if this will help other people, I'll be happy to tell my story. And so I started collecting these stories, and that's kind of how it all came about. And the stories themselves, once I pulled them all together and looked at them, they kind of fit into 5 categories. One, the mistakes around allowing confusion was the first one. Connecting with your people was the second. Running truly awful meetings is the mistake. Hiring and firing poorly, and then giving and receiving feedback. So they all kind of fit nicely into those categories. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how I organized the book. And
okay, where can we grab a copy for all who's listening? Where did we get it?
Yeah, Amazon is that's on me on Amazon. So it's that's probably the one people are most familiar with. Okay. There's for those who want to buy bulk, there's a site called Porchlight where they give you discounts for multiple copies. So and I know sometimes leaders want to buy it for their team or for a broader organization. It's a better way to do it from a price perspective. But Amazon is a great way to pick up a copy.
Yeah, and they can find information about you at McHargue.com.
That's
and your last name is spelled McHargue. So McHargue.consulting.com. Yep. Cool. Okay, can we get into those 5 areas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Micah, you got something?
I got something just real quick before we get into the 5 areas. Is there one theme that seemed to be the biggest that you heard the most?
Oh, that's good. So maybe we start there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, these different categories, the mistakes were all spread through there. But if there's a theme throughout the entire book, it is good leaders are humble and vulnerable. And so the book's about mistakes, but it's actually really about vulnerability as a leader. And the fact that these senior executives were willing to not only tell the stories to their teams, but to tell the story to the whole world, to say, I blew it. I made a mistake. I was not good at this. That says something about the leaders themselves. And so I commend the leaders for being willing to do that and share that. And that's the theme that kind of goes throughout the entire thing.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's super important that you said that, because I think there's a lot of leaders that think they're not allowed to make mistakes, or, as you said, humble. They are the top dog or number 2 or number 3 even, and they go, well, I can't show this vulnerability to the people that are underneath me, not realizing that we're all on this learning journey it's never ending thing. So, and that can devastate a business once one of those starts being like that.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think there's an idea that, hey, as leaders, we need to have all the answers. We need to be the smartest one in the room, and we need to. And the reality is I do an exercise sometimes with teams, and I say, hey, who's the best leader you ever worked with or for, and what made that leader great? It is never. No one ever says, "Oh, it was the smartest person," or it was like the person who was not who didn't sweat under pressure. Like, it's always the person who was just honest with me and vulnerable and said, "I can use some help and support me." And I mean, that's always the leader that people talk about. That's who you want to follow. You don't want to follow the one who's like, don't let them see you sweat.
Hey, y'all! I just want to make an observation. When I see someone going through a legal situation, it seems like there are way too many unknowns. Well, the Allen Firm provides legal guidance so that you can make a great decision, come to a resolution, and be at peace. For more information about the Allen Firm, visit allenlawfirm.com.
That's so interesting. Oh, yeah. So let's put an umbrella over all this of vulnerability. as being a
Yeah.
big deal. I mean, personal relationships and all that too. We could go off on a tangent. Like that's just it's so crucial. But
Yeah.
okay, well
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
get into some areas.
Yeah. Well,
Start with number one.
yeah, we'll start with the first one. The first category is about allowing confusion in the organization. We have six questions that we try to help teams answer at the table group. Why do we exist? Purpose. How do we behave? What are our core values? What do we do? What's our business definition? Question 4 is how will we succeed? Question 5 is what's most important right now, and number 6 is who must do what. And a lot of the mistakes kind of fit very squarely into that. The very first one is about company purpose and being clear about that. Every organization in the world is meant to help people in some way. So let's not shy away from that. Let's talk about it and be clear about that. And that's where clarity starts with organizations.
Well,
You want to
on
say something?
that, is it good to be more narrow in your definition or more broad? I mean, I've heard y'all talk about that a little bit, but or does it matter
Yeah,
as long as you're
yeah,
clear?
I think you want to have clarity first and foremost, and some choose something a little bit broader. I think a lot, some more specificity is good. The very first story is David Griffin from Griffin Media in Oklahoma City, and they're a radio and television station in Oklahoma City serving
Mm,
Oklahomans. Their why we exist statement, and we exist to help Oklahomans be safe, informed, and entertained.
mm.
That's what we do. We
Yeah.
keep Oklahoma safe, informed, and entertained. Super clear. We know exactly what it's all about. And it's a noble cause, absolutely a noble
Yeah.
cause, and
Okay.
that's what they're all about. So, but without clarity, well, most companies, most leaders can't articulate that very well for their business,
Mm.
and so people are guessing or making it up. You can't have that, especially in a big organization.
Yeah. So clarity starts with answering those questions. But I think the trick that I found, at least for us in our business, is
Mhm.
we've been through the one pager, we've answered the questions, and we've been really clear on it. But I don't know if we've done a really great job or we're able to successfully communicate that in a way where it created super clarity. So I'd love for you to speak on that and how you go into the next steps. Because I think you can get some people out of the office, do some strategy stuff, get it defined, fight it out, and then what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think answering those clarity questions is the first thing, and that's what the executive team needs to do, leadership team needs to do. But communicating it. In fact, in Pat's model, over communicating clarity is the third discipline of a healthy organization. That means you got to share these answers over and over and over and over and over and over. And you can't stop. You can't stop. People will say you need to say things 7 times in 7 different ways. That's kind of old research. The reality is everyone's so distracted these days. You got WhatsApp, you got IMs, you got DMs, you got
Mhm.
Zoom, you got Team. Like everyone is so distracted with all these things happening. You say things 7 times, maybe it hits the radar, maybe it doesn't. Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably not.
you don't even hear it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but when a leader starts every meeting by saying, "Hey, you guys,
Mm,
as we get going down this path, let's just be really clear about what the purpose of our business is, and let's think about those values we have: humble, hungry, and smart." Any examples of somebody living those today?
mm,
And as we have decisions to make, remember these are our strategic anchors. These are the things that we really should be paying attention to and are going to help us
mm.
be successful. And then, let's take a look at where we are on that thing that's most important right now, our thematic goal. Are we where we need to be or aren't we? If we are, we probably don't need to talk about it today. But if we're not, let's put it on the agenda and get it unstuck. So, that I just went through that. That took all of about, 1 minute.
Yeah,
In my
that's good.
experience, leaders can do it in less than 5 and do that same thing. And if you think in some of these bigger organizations, if every leader was just starting their meeting with a few minutes on clarity, why we're here, what we're trying to achieve, what our top priority is, that whole organization would be absolutely aligned.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that
So
answer, that's brilliant. I mean, that's a 2 minute. You already covered vision. What's the most important thing? Yeah, 100%.
Josh,
yeah,
you got to work
yeah.
on your new intros for
I
meetings.
know, man.
Just saying.
I know, man. My wheels are already turning. Micah knew I'd love interviewing you. Um, okay. Okay, so that's clarity. So let's get these big, most important things defined. And that's
Yeah.
what, why we exist, what we do, what's the most
Mhm.
important,
Yeah.
who's doing
Yeah.
what. There's another strategy stuff and one more I can't remember.
Yeah, and the core values is also a really critical one.
Core values,
Really,
yeah.
what
How
are
we
our core
behave.
values here? Yeah, yeah. Eric Peterson, who is the former CEO of Corporate Visions, he told a story about winning an award for being the person in his company who best exemplified the core values. This is years ago, 25 years ago or something. And he won that award and got on stage and did thanked everyone and worked through a speech, and then realized later in the night that he had no idea what the values were. Like he had no idea what those were. He had won the award, got the Rolex watch and everything. And he's like, I had no idea like what they were. And so when he became CEO, he was like, this is not happening in my organization. I'm gonna make sure everyone knows them. We're gonna tell stories around them so they're real. And then people can live those and help make some decisions based upon those. So I thought his story was an especially
awesome.
good one. Yeah, yeah.
Well, talk for a second on values, because I've heard you say also, or I've heard you guys say, like, you're more discovering it, you're not creating it, because sometimes they're just like
Right.
too big and just like, hey, we're honest. Okay, everybody, like, that's like baseline stuff. That's like, a
Yeah,
non-negotiable.
yeah,
Can you break those
yeah.
values down a little bit and help somebody, like, how would I actually create a real one that actually does something?
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, your values are probably already there. They just need to be discovered, sort of teased
Mhm.
out a little bit. And the way we help teams do that is by helping them, ask about the qualities of the top performers in the organization,
Mhm.
the probably the executive team also, are the things that we look for when we're hiring and when we're promoting and when we're moving people out of the organization. These are the key qualities. To your point earlier, these are things that are unique to our organization and they're differentiators for us. So,
Mhm.
the idea of honesty, is that a differentiator? In most organizations, if you lie, you probably get reprimanded or if not fired. You steal, you cheat, we're not going to call those things out. Integrity is one that, a lot of organizations have integrity out there. And I always push back on that. Is it really, are you
Yeah.
better at that, doing the right thing than 90% of
Yeah.
the organizations out there? Usually the answer is no.
Yeah.
So it's a permission to play value, but it's not really core to who we are and what we do.
Yeah. So we're looking for
So
differentiators, is
yeah,
what
yeah.
you're looking
What's
for. Yeah.
true about your best people, and what do you need to
Yeah.
have if you're going to be successful? And those are the behaviors you're trying to have in there. Yeah,
Well,
Okay.
and I used
Good.
to here in Austin, I used to run a production company, and we would have to do these scripts for these companies. And I always thought it was very interesting. My lead writer would always say, Monica would go, "These are unqualified. How can you actually say this? Because it's
yeah,
like an
Mhm.
undefined thing. You're just saying it with no examples, with no."
Mhm.
And to
yeah,
your point, Mike, I think that happens a lot still today. Is you're just throwing out these buzzwords and all these things that
Mhm.
you think people want to hear and associate with you, and yet you have
yeah,
zero proof that you actually do any of
Yeah.
those things or that they're aligned with your company.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's
No,
so
it's it's
true.
for, it's for sure. And I think the stories are so key to that. Yeah,
Mhm.
sharing stories, like examples of people living those values. That's how it gets reinforced.
That's
I,
cool.
I have in my small business, I have 3 people on my team, and I open every meeting with clarity as you would expect I would. You would hope I would, right?
Mhm.
And I say, hey, our core values are humble, hungry, and smart, or I have them share them. Humble, hungry, and smart. When we say with a high GPA, which is generosity, pace, and a positive attitude,
Mhm.
GPA. And I always say, hey, who's got an example of someone living one of those things over the past week? And they're ready for it now because I do it every time. They're like, oh, here's an example of someone operating with pace, or hey, we were a little generous here. We didn't need to be, but we were, and that kind of reinforces the
That's
values that we've got there. So, yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. Wow. Okay, let's go lesson 2, or big area 2.
yeah, yeah. That one is about connecting with your team.
Okay.
And there's a quote that I have at the very top of that, or the opening chapter, that just says, if you can't connect, you can't lead. And I have found this to be true over time, and that is absolutely true. You got to be able to connect. And I think especially young leaders have a tendency to just get right to business and let's get right to the numbers and let's go do these things. But getting to know people on your team is critical. It's super important. It gets overlooked, but not just getting to know their work, which is great. Using the working genius to know what kind of work gives them energy. That's all
Mhm.
good too. But understanding people, we are humans, and
Mhm.
getting to know them personally. getting to know their hopes and dreams and aspirations, getting to know their families, understanding, do you have children? Hey, how long have you been married? Where'd you come from? Like you asked me at the beginning of the podcast. That is absolutely critical. And it gets overlooked and it isn't brought up as much as it could be. But I lost a great person years and years ago who was outstanding. And, she basically said, hey, I heard there was a family culture here, but I'm not seeing it. And I said, oh, tell me more about that. She goes, well, you really want to know? I go, yeah, I want to know. She said, you're the problem. Like you're the problem here. I've been here 2 years. You don't even know me. Yeah. How many kids do I have? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And what are their names? Don't know. Great person. I mean, I still keep in touch with this person. And but I totally blew it there. I lost a really great person, a really great contributor to our organization because I wasn't willing to slow down and spend the time to get to know her.
Yeah.
So,
well,
important one.
I think that's finally, or I think that's also kind of especially hard, maybe for even some of the older, I'm thinking my parents' generation and like, I just think back at several examples, like that's just not something that's even kind of on the radar. It's like you show up, you do your stuff, and like I don't, and maybe it's not even thought about. I mean, I'm not bashing them. It's like probably they don't even think about it. So I bet that's a hard transition for a lot of people to like put those lenses on of like these are people like, and
That's right.
you need to know about them.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And some of the other stories in that are Dr. Bill Maurice, who's the CEO of Mayo Medical Labs
Oh, wow.
at the Mayo Clinic, and he talks about vulnerability. And he talks about a mistake that he made, and knowing what he needed to do is go and apologize for that mistake and for not bringing people along sooner. That's a hard thing for any leader to do, especially hard in the medical profession. Where mistakes can be life or death
Mhm.
for a physician to say, I blew it. I made a mistake on this thing and I got to do better next time. It's a great story. It's great. It's a great story.
Mhm.
One of my favorites on there.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's three?
All right. Number three is meetings. And
Okay,
I will tell
here we
you,
go.
you asked about that earlier. I think meetings are probably the one that, I don't know, of all the mistakes, like everyone relates to it because like meetings, Pat
Because they've
says
all
meetings feel like corporate penance, right? And the reality is because they're bad meetings.
because they've all
Like
been in crappy ones. Yes,
I
what's
know,
happened?
I know, it's so
I've
true. Yeah, on Pat's book, Death by Meeting. Are you guys familiar with that book?
I've read it, but I can't like bring a lot of it to memory. But I remember it just
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
can't
wish
talk
I
about
wish
it.
I wish I had a prop here because actually I might. Oh yeah, let me grab it. So check this out. So the book Death by Meeting, the name right says it all. But if you look closely, I'll kind of hold this up. Look at the guy at the end of the table there. See him?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have all been that guy, right? We've been in a meeting where we were in the meeting and that's how we felt. But if we're honest about it, as leaders, we've probably led the meeting that guy was in, right? Probably more than once,
100%.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
It's and so anyway, I got really passionate about meetings after I read his book, and I joined a company that had absolutely awful meetings. But the reality is we hate meetings when they're not relevant, they're not useful. We're not getting things accomplished. Like if we are going to a meeting, we know what the purpose is. We are talking about the most important and difficult issues, and then we're leaving the meeting with clarity about decisions and actions and what we're going to communicate. Nobody hates that meeting. Like nobody hates that meeting. In fact, if you're doing meetings right as a senior leadership team, you want to be in that meeting because this is the game time of business. Like this is where we're making important decisions and we're solving the problems of the business. And so I am extremely passionate about helping leaders and teams get their meetings right, like really get them right. And when you do, you never want to go back to a meeting that doesn't have the structure of that organization.
Just never feels right after that. Well,
Yeah.
give us a little bit of a 30,000-foot view on what a good meeting looks like. You blew through those pretty quick. So dial
Yeah.
it down just a minute and talk about some of those components, just so maybe somebody
Yeah.
can grab a nugget and follow up with you even.
Yeah. I think there's really three parts to a good meeting. One is you start with clarity. What's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to accomplish? Let's be clear about that because it could be a check-in meeting where we're just trying to know what each other's up to. It could be
Mhm.
a staff meeting where we're tactically trying to move the business forward. It could be a strategic meeting where we're trying to talk about a much bigger issue. So let's be really clear. So it starts with clarity. As I said before, we're talking about the most important things. If everybody on the leadership team is saying, wait, is this the most critical thing that we could be talking about? Because not only is it important that we're not wasting time, but it's expensive to have a group of senior executives in this meeting. Let's make sure we're not wasting time and talking about the really most critical and important things. And then it ends with clarity in terms of, what do we discuss and decide? What are we going to share and what are we not going to share? These are the critical things. And I see a lot in that last piece. If there's like one tip that I could share here is like really saving a little time at the end of the meeting to say, wait, let's leave this meeting with clarity about decisions and actions, what we're going to share outside and what we're not going to share. Because when a senior leadership team leaves with confusion, and we all do this, right? Oh, shoot, you guys, I got a meeting. I got to go.
Yeah.
Everyone runs off. And it's like, what? Wait, one person's like, I'm glad we decided that. I'll tell everybody. And someone else is like, I don't know if we decided anything. I'm not going to say anything. And all of a sudden it's like, what just happened in that executive meeting? Like one person said this, one person said nothing. And so just really being disciplined about that to cascade clarity through the organization. It's really, really important, really critical.
Do you guys usually have somebody you'd recommend to be documenting all those things and like a kind of a main communicator? I mean, that's just a super granular question, but
no, it's a great question. Some leaders are really good at that and want to be the one to do it. So if you're the CEO, it's your meeting and you got to make sure it ends with clarity and message gets cascaded. Now, whether you want to take point on that and say, hey, you guys, we got 5 minutes left. And I know you're all thinking about your next meeting, but I'm going to go up to the whiteboard. I'm going to write here's what we're sharing. Here's what we're not sharing. Is everybody good with that? That's one way to do it. Others like to have a chief of staff or an administrative person kind of pulling it all together at the end to be able to cascade things out. I think that's more of a personal preference, but as the CEO or as the senior leader, it's up to you to make sure that happens. It's your responsibility.
That's great. Super good. And then talk briefly then while we're still on this topic and then we'll move on. Give us a little bit of an idea of the different type of meetings that a business should expect to have.
Yeah. We and again, this is all from Pat's book, Death My Meeting. So I'm, you mentioned the working genius earlier, and we were talking about that. Pat's the inventor. Like he comes up with this stuff. I'm not an inventor. I just take that and really help apply it with teams and organizations. Yeah. But the 4 types that he recommends, and I found this to be really useful. The first one's a check-in. It's administrative. Good teams know what each other's up to. Let's make sure that we are doing this on a regular basis, catching up and make sure we know on each other's schedules, what our top priorities are for the week, et cetera. Second type is a tactical meeting, staff meeting, most organizations call it, typically once a week. And this is where we are checking in on the business and we're trying to move it forward, trying to make some decisions and move our top goals forward and see what's in the way and try to solve those issues. The third type of meeting is a strategic meeting. This is where we've got a bigger issue. If we try to attack that in our tactical staff meeting, it's going to take up the whole time, and we can't do that. This is something that's really worthy of extra effort and extra time. We're going to block off a couple of hours, and we're going to really lean into that particular item. And the fourth type is what we call an offsite, and we recommend teams do this quarterly. But these are developmental in nature. We are coming together, typically offsite, because you can get real distracted when you're on site, and looking at the bigger ideas of the business. What's the next strategic thing we need to do? Let's look out 3 years. Let's talk about the key leaders in our organization and what we're doing to develop them. So these are even bigger things that we're doing together. But we're developing the team and we're establishing better relations between team members. And sometimes you got to slow down to do that. And we recommend that every quarter.
That's so super good. Yeah. And then I know a lot. I have one more question on meetings.
Sure.
There's a certain component of it that you guys like to see in each one, and like to build trust and vulnerable and conflict. I want to dial in on conflict because a lot of people would avoid that. But I want to just hear you talk about conflict and why that's important to have and how to do that correctly in a meeting. Unstuck Coaches hates it when movement and progress in a person's life or business is stuck or frozen or slowed or just stopped altogether. Well,
we have found a solution. Unstuckcoaches.com. They offer a variety of coaching services to get you or your business moving again. Check out unstuckcoaches.com.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think people come to conflict from a lot of different places, right? So the three of us on this call here probably grew up in different households with different comfort levels of conflict. And maybe one of us grew up with a family that avoided conflict at all costs. We're going to keep artificial harmony. We're never bringing up the hard issues. Maybe one of us grew up in a family where, hey, we were ready to go. Like someone brings something up and we are going to challenge each other and we're going to argue about it and debate right away. So a team needs to, first of all, have a conversation. Like, how are we going to handle conflict? And so that's an important conversation to have. And some teams come up with specific conflict norms, or some just talk about that. But meeting without conflict. If a team says, you know what, we never have conflict, I would always push back and say, well, you're not talking about the important things. There's no way, because we're all different. We have diversity of opinions, diversity of thoughts, diversity of backgrounds. We're going to disagree from time to time. And that's usually where the best decisions get made, is when we have a disagreement, we hash it out, and then we come to an agreement.
So it's almost a red flag when people just are like, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. You're just like,
yeah, that's right.
Dang. You're not even
that means you don't care. That means you don't care, or you're just not willing to go there to say, I disagree. And the very best teams are good at bringing up the hard issues. You got to have trust, though, which is that foundation layer of the five dysfunctions. You got to have trust there to be able to engage in that productive conflict, because otherwise it feels nasty. Josh, are you calling me out in front of the team? It feels political and uncomfortable. If we've got trust there, I know you're just challenging me because we got to get it right. We got to get it right for our customers, for the board, for our investors, et cetera. So good meetings have good conflict.
And the offside really may help on trust building. It sounds like there's a piece there, and a lot of the
Well, and I think also when the trust is there, it doesn't turn personal. Like, you're not attacking me personally, which seems to be the human automatic reaction, is that when the conflicts come, you're bringing up something in the past that you have no idea about. I'm just taking it that way, kind of thing.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. You're making me turn into a 13-year-old immediately by doing something. Yeah.
I think conflict is one of those words that people react to sometimes, like dysfunction, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a negative. We don't think that. We think conflict is good, productive conflict, good ideological debate about the important things. That's good. And that's what leadership teams should be spending their time on.
That's perfect. Thank you for that, Mike. Let's go number 4. Mm-hmm. So we have allowing confusion is a big mistake. Not connecting with your team, doing meetings incorrectly. Well, what do we have next?
This one's about hiring and firing.
Okay.
And the chapter is about hiring fast and firing slow, which is those are the two mistakes, right? All kind of combined into one. And I would say that in talking to leaders about the mistakes they've made, this is the one that tends to have the most visceral reaction. And the consequences are so severe when you rush to hire, and when you're not thoughtful about finding someone who is aligned to the organization and its purpose, or not aligned to the values that we've agreed upon. That's so challenging. We've, all three of us have made the mistake of hiring someone who wasn't a good fit, and seeing the problems and the trauma that ensue as a result, right? Josh, you're like, oh my gosh, you're probably even thinking of one right now. I remember a terrible one.
He's thinking of me. That's what he's thinking about right now. Gosh. No. Thanks, Mike.
No, I'm thinking, what I was thinking is, like, how much does that cost me? Like, speak to that. I know there's some stats on that. Like, it's done them a disservice, but how much does it actually cost the company to have turnover? I think it's pretty staggering amount, isn't it? Like,
oh my God. Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, the cost that's involved in that. And just while someone's there, before you're able to move them out of the organization, the drama and the lack of productivity that ensues by getting someone who's not a good fit. Yeah, it's tragic. And so, slowing it down. I mean, the big message here is, on the hiring side, slow it down, get more people involved, When people say, "Yeah, we hired someone for our executive team," I was like, "Well, did everyone get a chance to talk to them?" And they're like, "Oh, no, I just made the decision." It's like, what a missed opportunity. Yeah, to like kind of gang up and say, "Hey, I wasn't seeing the humility. Maybe you want to jump into that and or whatever."
Mhm.
And really make sure you're taking the time to do that because people have gotten very good at interviewing. You know
Oh
what
yeah,
the right answers are, and you can fake it for a half hour or an hour, like a couple hours. But man,
100%. And
really, go
so
ahead.
and then so if you hire slow, when you get a lot of people around it, does that mean you're firing more quickly?
Yeah,
I mean, over a
because
period, talk about firing, yeah.
I think I find that most leaders wait too long to move somebody out at the organization who's not a good
Mhm.
fit or who's not doing the work. And good people want to give people a chance, and I get that. But I don't think there's a faster way to ruin engagement and morale in your organization than keeping someone around who's not doing the work or who isn't a good fit. And I think most leaders wait too long to do that.
Yeah.
So, hopefully when someone's not a good fit, you've been talking to them, or when they're not doing the work, you've been holding them accountable and giving them feedback all on the way. So it's not a surprise when you make that move.
Yeah.
But it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it's the kindest thing you can do is to give people feedback and move them out of an organization where they're not a good fit.
Yeah.
Can
So
you
And if
yeah,
you're, yeah,
I was just gonna say, can you expand a little bit on that? Just on the fact that, as you said earlier, some people make that they make it an emotional decision of like, I know what's going on in this person's life and this and that, and I'm gonna give them multiple chances and chances and chances. Uh,
yeah,
in the old, like Josh said earlier, the old school guys would have just been like, "Nah, you're not doing your stuff, out." Right?
yeah,
And we've
yeah.
gotten, I'm not going to say we've gotten soft-ish because we always want to help out people and give them chances and stuff, but what is that? I mean, do you just make up a rule where the three strikes you're out, or your metrics aren't meeting your goals? I mean, how do you come up with somewhat, when you're trying to balance the doing good for the person, giving them a chance, but then also know that I can't wait 2 months for them to wreck this business?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. I mean, boy, it's a great question, and every situation is a little bit different there. If someone's not doing the job, sometimes it's a lot easier. It's a lot cleaner to like be able to document. You're not doing what I've managed sales organizations for a long time. In a lot of ways, that's an easier conversation. Here's your quota. You're not meeting your quota, and I can say you're not doing the things to get the quota there. Like it's a very clear conversation. It's harder in other lines of work to be able to really delineate that. But if someone's not doing the job, it's easier than if they're not a good fit. And that's why the hiring side is so important because you hire someone who's a good fit, that's probably not going to be an issue later on. But yeah, those are hard conversations. Being able to, I mean, that's the job of a leader is to have the hard conversations when you need to. And a lot of leaders shy away from that. And being able to tell someone that behavior is not aligned to what we say we're going to do here. And we can't have that anymore. And if you're going to keep doing that behavior, that's fine, but you just can't do it here.
Mhm.
We're gonna make you available to the marketplace if you keep doing that behavior.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's been something I've struggled with a lot. And because it's easier as believers, like Mike was saying, like you want to also treat people right as much as you can, but oftentimes
Yeah.
not. It's probably been way too slow, or if ever, eventually it just doesn't work out. But
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Well, organizations that are the worst at this are oftentimes churches and nonprofits. And it's like, hey, it's like a violation of being kind or Christ-like if you're going to have that hard conversation. I would disagree completely. I think it's the kindest thing you can do. And I think if we're looking at Jesus as the role model in this, he was pretty darn direct. He gave people pretty honest feedback, if you ask me.
Yeah, now I'm
So
thinking about
we're
him
going to try to.
let the dogs or whatever, like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
feel I mean, I've definitely not done well on that, in the
yeah.
past. But
Well,
I
and
mean,
Josh, I wouldn't dig at you. I'm just
no, I know
saying,
it's not, but
in
like that's for sure something
general,
I messed
we're
up.
always trying to. I mean, Mike said it best. When you're in this a church organization or a nonprofit, or you're a business full of believers, that's the hardest thing, is because you want to try to give them multiple chances, and this and that. People stick around in ministry for a long time, probably in churches or environments that they really shouldn't be in. But once you hit like a 3-year mark or 4-year mark, then you're like, oh, he's got tenure.
You're
He's got
tenured.
tenure. He's going to be here as long as a professor would normally be, even though he's not leading the team correctly or whatever. So
yeah. And that's terrible for the church board or the church staff. It's terrible for the people who go to the church to have the not having the hard conversations or having someone who's not a good fit. So I mean, everybody loses in that scenario.
Okay, let's move on before I tear up over here. Like,
well, I will tell. I'll say one last thing about that one is that you show me a leader who's been leading people for a long period of time who says, I haven't made mistakes in terms of hiring or moving people out. I got a name for that person. Their name is liar.
Yeah,
because we've all done it. Like
gosh.
we all have. Let's just be open and vulnerable and try to get better next time. Because let's learn from that.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
the last area that you covered was what?
Yeah. Feedback.
Mm.
Feedback. Yep.
That's another big one that God we don't do right. I mean, and I say organizations a lot of times. Speak on that. What is it? How do you do it?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I started asking these questions, a lot of the ones that fit in the feedback category were about giving feedback. And good leaders, give really clear feedback. When things go well, we celebrate. We recognize people and we call it out. We catch people doing great things, and we do that. When things don't go so well, we don't shy away from saying that. And you can do it in a very kind way. Hey, Josh, that didn't go so well. Let me give you some feedback on that, because we don't want to do that again. And the best leaders usually who are involved in that kind of mistake say, what could I have done better? Like, give me some feedback as well. But, good leaders give feedback in both instances there. One of my favorite stories in the whole book, though, it's the very last story. And that is by a leader named Tavo Godfredson. He was a friend of mine and a peer of mine for a while. He's now an executive coach. And he said, the most important thing a leader can do is ask for feedback. Ask for feedback and then act upon that feedback. Because when a leader, especially a senior leader organization, asks for feedback and then acts upon it, first of all, you're being vulnerable. You're also sending a message that says, hey, I'm not perfect. I could get better. And then when you act on that, people follow leaders. People are going to follow leaders. So if you're working on things and trying to get better at the things that you're deficient in, everyone else watches and does the same. So I really loved his story and kind of turned the whole thing around. His story was about going to his family and saying, hey, he's thinking to himself, I'm a pretty good dad. Hey, kids, what do you guys think? How do you think I'm doing? And they gave him some tough messages. And he was like, wow. I wasn't expecting that. I was hoping to have a little better story here. There's a lot of things I could do better as a husband and a father. And, same thing applies to leaders as well.
Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, you're a brave man when you walk up to.
I'm not going to ask my kids that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it at the right time if I can figure it out. No,
I'll ask your kids for you, Josh. How about that?
There you go. Yeah, ask each other's kids. You'll probably get a very honest answer. Yeah, very honest. Yeah.
No, I love it. Like I don't think I'm afraid of that question, but I would have been a couple years ago for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I think I've been humbled enough, involuntarily humbled enough in many ways to where I can just handle that. Okay.
There's that last story. I'll just say one more thing is that leads into I put that last for one because I love the story. I think it's a great one. But also what I did is I built a short assessment at the end of the book where a leader can grade themselves on those key mistakes. What am I doing well? What am I not doing well? And it's great for self-awareness, but the challenge is to take that self-assessment on the things you're doing well and not doing well, and then go into your team and saying, hey, I just took this assessment. I read this book and I took this assessment. Here's some things I think I'm doing pretty well. Do you guys agree with that or not? Because I think I'm pretty good at these things. But here's a number of things that I don't think I'm doing very well. I think I could be better at, running better meetings or giving feedback or, or hiring and firing. What do you guys think?
Mhm.
And there's the vulnerability right there to go to your team and say, I think I'm not very good at this. Do you agree? What can I get better at? That's when, like I said, the whole organization gets better.
That's such a healthy place, though, if the leader starts doing that. Oh man.
Yeah.
Um. Well, we have about 10 more minutes. I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna look over. I was gonna see if there's anything else I'm gonna be mad about as soon as we hang up that I didn't that didn't ask you. Were there some other just you mentioned some of the biggest mistakes. You asked the question, some of the biggest mistakes, these leaders have made. Were there anything that you wanted to mention that we're missing? Like, hey, here's some of the most important things a business should do, or some of
Yeah.
the worst things that you've seen them do that don't do this.
Yeah. Um, as just kind of thinking back on some of the stories in the book, there's only one mistake that shows up twice. And it shows up in the feedback section and it shows up in the connecting with your team section. And that is to, give positive feedback when things go well. When someone's aligning to the values or does something well, it just fit in both those categories. The stories were a little bit different and they kind of got it at a different way. But I think a lot of leaders sometimes maybe don't need so much praise. And so they're like, well, I don't need it. They're just doing your job. So I'm not going to give it.
Yeah.
And people in organizations are desperate for their leaders to say, you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job, but you're doing a good job. Catch people doing that. And that shows up and that makes a huge difference. Dave Kroll was the leader who talked about it in the first section there. And he was like, you know what? Giving positive feedback and reinforcing good behavior, it's simple and it's free. It doesn't cost anything to call someone and say you're doing a great job there. And I think we get so busy as leaders. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. I don't want to slow down and say, wow, that went really well. Let me make sure the people who are part of that, got the feedback they needed on doing such a great job. It just goes such a long way.
Yeah,
And the ability
praise.
to do that's important.
I know. And do it legitimately, not just as a fake thing, I guess too, would be a big deal, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Just make
Yeah.
something up, like actually look in those lenses of what they're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And oh, go ahead, Micah.
no, go
Yeah.
ahead. Finish your thought, and then I got a question.
Oh, I was just going to say the other story. Sanjay Mehrotra from Micron, he's a CEO at Micron. They were working on their core values, and they came up with their kind of final list of core values. And the way we did that was by asking the whole executive team, think of some people in the organization who are such a good fit. Like they're such a good fit here. If we could hire more people like them, we would do it in a heartbeat. And if they left, we would all be horrified. And so we went through that and we listed out a bunch of names. And there was a guy who came up, with this executive team, came up 4 times. Like 4 people said that's the guy we think of when we think about a great fit.
Mm.
And so right there, we talked about that. We talked about other people. We got their core values figured out, and then we did something that I had never done before. Is we gave them a call. Now, right there is the executive team, CEO, and the executive leaders called
Oh,
this
sweet.
guy, and like real time, and said, "Hey, we're in this offsite right now. We were talking about people who are such a great fit, and your name came up. In fact, your name came up multiple times." And we just wanted to thank you for like being such a great fit at our organization and living these values that we think are so critical. And several members of the team chimed in. Hey, I want to say something too. I want to say something too. I mean, it took 5 minutes. It took 5 minutes. That guy is never going to forget that call. Never going
No.
to forget that call. And do you think the word got out about that? Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And again, simple thing, easy to do, but had a huge impact on him and probably the whole organization to be recognizing people that way. So that's
Sweet.
another,
Man,
yeah.
that is awesome. Yeah, I need to tell Josh that more.
I'll need to call. Yeah.
I
So
need
I need
to.
to call some people too.
Yeah, I need to get better
Why
at
don't you
that.
why don't you call him right now? Let's
I'll
give him a call
call
right now.
him.
You
Oh,
want
I
to say
gotta go to
anything?
lunch
Do you
after
do you
this.
want
I'll
to
call
say
him after
anything,
lunch.
Micah? Do you need to tell me? No.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say was there a chapter that didn't make the book because your wife was tired of editing your stuff?
Oh,
Was
good
there
one.
a seventh? Because there were 6, right?
Yeah.
Five.
Five. They're
Five.
five.
So was there a 6 that like you just kind of teetered on? I mean, like
Yeah.
like not only the relationship between boss and staff, but staff and staff. Like,
Yeah. I will tell you that the hardest one to get represented in the book was one that we make all the time, and that was the firing people. because I get to work with the best leaders, and these are everyone in that book is just a great leader who's humble and caring and vulnerable and all that. But no one wanted to be the guy or gal that is known as
Gave
the one who fires people really
the
well.
expert at firing.
Yeah.
the firing example
And
guy.
so, I'll be honest. Like, I called a friend of mine. His name's Dave Parson. I'm like, Dave, you got to do me a solid. I mean, I've known him since fourth grade. I'm like, I know you fired people, and you had to, and you didn't do it very well. But I need you to do the story because nobody else wants to talk about that. He's like, I got you. I got you back. I'll do it. And he did. And it's a great story, and it's a true story. But that's the only one where I'd say, man, I was really struggling to get someone to be that guy. And it makes sense, but it's a really great story as a result. So I don't think there's anything that I left out that didn't happen. I had some leaders that couldn't do it because they didn't get approval from like a Fortune 500 company and a senior VP. It's like, I know we don't want this VP telling about this mistake they made, which could affect our stock price or what. So there was a little bit of that, which is disappointing. But I was able to find another leader who had a similar mistake because it was such a good one, and be able to include it in there. So I don't think anything got left out on purpose.
Right.
But
well, I'm gonna go and order the book and read it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Because what I think it ties into the reason of why we did this podcast somewhat, in that stories enhance what you're trying to learn, you're trying to teach, whatever, and it makes it real. And we've tried as a we'll take the law firm that we work with for. We tried to turn it into the stories of people needing guidance and being scared, and lawyers are creepy or whatever those things are, that people are nervous about hiring a lawyer. And we've tried to, me and Josh have created this, dude, we're just here to guide you in the scary situation, and it's not really that scary. You just need someone to come alongside you. So I think that's what I'm most interested in, is reading these stories from these CEOs and these C-level guys that make me feel like I am a normal person. Like, they're no different than us. They're just a little they've just got a little bigger coconuts to just go ahead and make the decision and not be scared of a repercussion if there shouldn't be. I mean, anyway, that's what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, me too,
for this book.
Well, thank you.
The last two things, Mike, you mentioned a book and some material we were communicating with called "People Are Good." Tell me about that one, because I think I want a copy of that as well.
That's my wife's book. So People Are Good. At the time she wrote that book, she there was just a lot of hate and a lot of anger in the world, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, there's so many good things going on, but that never makes the news, never makes press. That someone just did something randomly for somebody else who needed it. And so she's like, I'm going to start collecting these stories. So she started asking people, started collecting these stories, and it's hers, I think, I don't know how many she's got, probably 75 stories or something like that, short paragraphs of just somebody who went out of the way for somebody else and did something special.
I love it.
And it's great. And
we can get that on Amazon.
That book,
can we get that on Amazon as well? And okay,
you sure can. The same last name. Her first name is Anna, Anna. Okay.
Now, did you edit her book? Did you get to edit her book?
No way. No, that is not my area of expertise.
What is your working genius?
Yeah, my working genius is W&G. So wonder. Like, I will sit and wonder and ponder, think about teams, think about what we can do to make things better. I'm a big picture guy. And then galvanizing. I love to rally a team. I love to help a team, understand these things and apply them and make their organizations better. So that's kind of how it all fits for me.
That's perfect. Okay. Land the plane with some encouragement to the discouraged business owner or executive. Give us some encouragement, give us some good news, and maybe some steps, and then we will wrap it up.
Yeah, I think back to what we started with a little earlier about vulnerability and transparency and humility. I mean, that is it. The old adage of never let them see you sweat is a joke. It's great for selling deodorant years ago. I don't know if you guys remember that commercial, but it is not the mark of a good leader. It's good. It's a mark of a good flight attendant. I fly all over the world, and when you start bumping around, you look at that flight attendant and they're cool and they're not rattled. I mean, that's great. As a leader, though, being honest and vulnerable and saying, "Hey, I'm struggling here. I could really use your help," or "I'm not as good at this as you are. Would you come alongside and help me here? Because it needs all of us if we're going to be successful here." The more you can do that, the more you can be vulnerable and humble and honest with your people, the better. And the very best leaders I've ever worked with or for are that way. So that would be my suggestion and my encouragement.
That's a great place to start. Mike, we love it. So tell everybody the great way to contact you if they want some more information, if they want some coaching help, or if they, want a signed copy of the book. I don't know if you do that, but how can they reach out to you?
Yeah. So my website is MikeMcHargue consulting.com.
Okay.
And I think you gave that earlier, and I'll imagine you'll put it in the show
we'll
notes
put it in the note
there. So that's great. I always love talking to leaders about their teams and making those organizations healthier. Sometimes it turns into engagement. Sometimes it's just a conversation where I get to meet somebody new, give them a couple ideas that they can do it, and I love that too. So that's great. And so easy to catch up with me on that website.
Perfect.
I'm on the Table Group website because I'm one of 50 consultants that do that. So there's another way there. The book is online on Amazon, as we talked about earlier. So I think between those different things, people should be able to get me somehow if they want to.
That's great, Mike. Man, I've loved it. You fueled up just the love of the organization and leadership and structures and health and all that. So thanks for making time today. And we bless you on your business and book. And we look forward to following you and connecting later.
Thanks so much. Grateful to be with you guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for joining us on this latest edition to the StoryField podcast. We hope that you have been challenged, inspired, and ready to take that next step, whatever that is. If you know someone with an amazing story that needs to be heard, send us an email at info@thestoryfield.com. Have a fantastic day, and we can't wait for you to join us on the next episode of The StoryField.